This is the Dallas Morning News.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into SportsDay Insider presented by the Dallas Morning News. I am Kevin Sherrington, joined by my old pal Evan Grant. We'll have David Moore on in a little while to talk about the Cowboys. But first, we're going to talk about, first of all, let's talk about our Thanksgiving. How did it go? How was your Thanksgiving, Evan?
Kevin, we hosted the biggest group we've ever hosted, and you should never put me in charge of groceries. The good news is you won't get underfed. The bad news is I only overbought by one Greenberg smoked turkey.
Well, that's a lot, though.
I know. It was an entire smoked turkey that I had to carve up for myself for leftovers. So if anybody wants to come over.
Yeah, you got leftover sandwiches for a month? Is that the deal?
Yeah. There's a lot of sandwiches here.
Yeah. Well, that's nice. It was nice of you to put that on for everybody. I know you invited Sean McFarland to come. Sean, of course, one of the fine young additions to our Sports Day staff. And he was marooned here. He's from Massachusetts. Couldn't be home for the holidays. And so,
Sean is from like 20 miles away from Plymouth.
Is that something that we should be proud of?
Well, that's where the Pilgrims landed, Kevin. That's where.
You're going for the Thanksgiving significance. I thought maybe you just thought Plymouth was such a great place. He's only 20 miles from Plymouth.
Yeah.
That's where they make the cars. No,
that's a different Plymouth, I think.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, Sean could. We asked him to come in like a buckle hat and with the Pilgrim haircut. He declined on that front. But he could have given us lots of Pilgrim lore. How was your Thanksgiving?
It was good. We went and had Thanksgiving at my wife's ancestral home in Arkansas. It's always been a lot of fun to go there. A little bittersweet this time. It was in the last days of my mother-in-law, and so it was very difficult in some ways, but also very joyous, which is how she would have wanted it. When Debbie and I got married 37 years ago, we got married on the grounds there. They live on 7 acres, and it's very beautiful. And Debbie's mom had a case of the shingles, really bad. And I think it was because she was a little nervous about this guy that was marrying her oldest daughter. And she told Debbie the morning of the wedding, she said, "Now listen, if I should die, y'all just put me in the bedroom and shut the door and just deal with me on Monday." Which I brought that up before I said grace over our Thanksgiving dinner. I said, because this is what Mimi would want us to do. That's what she said back then, and I believe it still holds today. And we did. We had a very joyous Thanksgiving, even given the situations, and she did pass on Sunday. So it was a wonderful life, and we certainly will miss her.
Well, that is nice that you were able to be there for her last days, and I am really sorry about your loss. But I also know, if there's one thing I know about the Sherrington family, and I will not say this again, but I will say it on the air at this one time, they do things right. It's a good family. It's kind of my ideal for what I wish family was all about. So I am glad you guys were able to do that, and I'm glad you'll be able to be there for Debbie. And you're good folks.
I appreciate that, Evan. Back at you.
At Texas Capital, we know that the path to greatness isn't for the faint of heart. It's full of chances and opportunities with no promises. We know because we help clients and communities achieve greatness every day. Texas Capital is a full-service financial services firm founded and headquartered in Dallas, Texas. Our customized solutions were built to keep your business moving forward. Please visit texascapital.com to learn more. That's texascapital.com. Texas Capital is the collective brand name for the Texas Capital Bank and its separate non-affiliate banks and wholly owned subsidiaries. For deposit products, member FDIC.
All right, let's talk a little college football. So we had a big game on Saturday in College Station. As a matter of fact, the Sports Day bus took me and Brad Townsend and Sean McFarland down there for the game, and we drove back afterwards, got back here about, 3:30, something like that.
I cannot believe you guys drove back after that game.
Well, Brad didn't really want to. Every time we went by a hotel, he said, "That sure looks like a nice hotel." I said, we're not stopping, Brad. We're going home, pal. I'm waking up in my own bed.
We're on a mission from God.
Yes, exactly. We were on a mission from God. Texas was on a mission from God in that game. They really, the score 17-7 really didn't indicate the one-sided nature of that game. I mean, I guess you can give, A&M credit for tipping a pass that went for a pick six and for forcing a couple of turnovers. But Texas turned the ball over a couple of times down there in the red zone when it could have been touchdowns. And the Texas defense has been good all year, but was really good against the Aggies. And I thought this was very telling when at the SEC Zoom press conference between Kirby Smart and Steve Sarkisian on Sunday, that Kirby said that they really did a good job, the Longhorns did a good job against a A&M front that he said, I think is probably the best in our conference. So, when you're running for 240 yards and Trey Wisner goes for like 188 or whatever it was on 33 carries, was just a hammer out there. That really was impressive. I think that gives Texas its quality win that everybody said was lacking after Michigan went in the tank and Oklahoma went in the tank. They have now won 11 straight road games. And that group includes some big games in there, in some tough places, including Arkansas, which is a tough place to play, even when the Razorbacks aren't all that good. But that was a big win, and that crowd was ready to go off. It was really loud at the first of the game, and Texas just took them right out of the game. That 17-0 first half lead, they just looked dominant. So I do think that they have changed a lot, Evan. That's what I wrote about in my column today. Texas is running the ball more effectively now, certainly more of a power game than they showed early in the season. And with Wisner, who's not necessarily a power back, he's just very difficult to bring down. He is a guy he'll whirl around, put his hand down, get up, push. He struggles for everything he gets. He's getting every last drop out of every single carry, which I think, has an impact on a team. It impacts the opponent. It also impacts your team when they see that kind of effort out there. I think that really gets the juices flowing a little bit.
Oh, 100%. And I do think Texas has changed greatly. I think that against Georgia, they, because of the turnovers, they got down early and they didn't run the ball, and they were a different offense at that point in time. But I think in the last half of the season, that Georgia game really was kind of a come to Jesus moment for Texas, and they've been a much better running team since then. And Wisner has had back-to-back 150-yard games. I think I looked this up this morning. 2 of the top 7 rushing performances in SEC league games this season were Quintravian Wisner in the last 2 weeks. So their running game is right at the right time. And I also think, and you alluded to this morning, Georgia's run defense is not what it has been in the past. Georgia Tech gashed them pretty good. Now, Georgia Tech was an RPO offense, but Georgia Tech gashed them pretty good with the running game, with a running back who was kind of similar to Wisner.
Yeah, I think that's right. And so I think that this will, I wrote when they lost to Georgia 30-15 back in October. It's like, after, Sark said that hopefully we'll get another crack. And it's like, why would you want another crack at this? This was domination, especially in that first half. But I do think both teams have changed since then. So, and, it's tough to beat somebody twice in 1 year. And for all we know, they may have to beat, somebody's going to have to win a third game. It's a very good chance that could happen at some point. So we'll see how that goes. Of course, as we're taping this, it's before the college football playoff rankings come out on Tuesday, and we don't know exactly what it is. But I will say, the AP rankings came out on Sunday as usual, and those typically mirror the what the committee does as well. At least it's close enough to it. Of course, as usual, we saw more upsets over the weekend. Not that they were going to impact anything greatly, but Ohio State's loss to Michigan certainly does. It dropped them several spots, and it should. I'm assuming it'll do the same with the committee. When those things happen, they have ramifications for the bubble teams, of course, because the committee is obviously going to get Ohio State in. They're not going to drop them out of the rankings completely. So it will make it difficult. But in those rankings, SMU comes in 8th, and they're the top ACC team, as they should be at this point. Now, it'll be really interesting now to see what happens after this weekend when the conference championship games, Texas playing Georgia and Atlanta, and of course, SMU playing Clemson in Charlotte. And right now, in the AP rankings, Clemson is 18th and Miami is 14th. It'd be very clean if SMU wins this game against Clemson, and they are right now, they're like the 8th seed, and then they will end up being the ACC would be the third ranked team, a third seeded team at that point, and would have an opening round bye. But if they lose, I mean, what's the committee going to do then? I mean, you got to take the conference champ, right? If Clemson wins, they're
Right.
18th. That means they're going to bump all the way up to 12th, where that's where the Big 12 is right now with Arizona State. And then can you have a team that lost its last game actually vault them? I mean, I don't see that. In other words, does SMU still end up in that top 12 if Clemson is in there too?
Well, I think that, on the polls, a couple of things for me. Ohio State's loss, I was wondering where Ohio State would end up. And I thought that SMU needed to jump ahead of Ohio State. They have not. And Ohio State is 7 in the AP poll. Clemson is 8. I will say this, by one
SMU is
vote
8.
in the coaches poll, SMU now leads Ohio State. They are 7th, and Ohio State is 8th. But if SMU loses and they're a 2-loss team and they've lost to Clemson in the championship game, do they get punished and knocked completely out of the playoff in favor of either an Indiana team or an Ohio State team as the 3rd or 4th Big 10 teams who did not even make their conference championship game? It's hard for me to see that happening, but it won't surprise me if that's how the committee goes.
Well, we've had that interesting discussion, and I'm always in on these weekly press conferences with the CFP committee chairman, Ward Manuel. And it's been asked, and he won't get into hypotheticals, but it's been asked, there's a feeling out there, like especially in the SEC, that you don't want to play in the championship game because if I go in there and I lose, then I'm out, right? Whereas if I'm just sitting there with 2 losses and I'm on the bubble, I might sneak in, and I didn't have to play that game. Well, what Manuel has said is that we value the championship game experience. We value the fact that you got there, and so if you're in the championship game, he made it sound like you get bonus points for that.
Well, let's see how that plays out. You're in the championship game against the number 18 ranked team. Let's see how that plays out. But that's assuming SMU loses. I'm not so sure I don't think SMU loses this game to Clemson. I think SMU has maybe the fastest team in the country, and they've got really good quarterback play right now. And that's a dangerous thing going into postseason football.
It is, and I'm with you on that. My question for SMU going forward, even should they win this week, is that how their lines match up, right? When you're playing against the defensive and offensive lines from the SC teams and even the top tier, Big 10 teams, that's a difference maker, and so, but you're right. If you can't have that, then that's what you want to be built around speed. And they certainly are that. And I agree with you. I think that SMU might be the fastest team in the country. Certainly Bashard Smith is the fastest running back in the country. So I think that, and Kevin Jennings is a terrific quarterback. So those things have been built up in the committee's mind now, I think they take those things. They're not just rewarding SMU. And I know the committee has taken a lot of abuse. Kirby Smart keeps talking about, I don't know why they don't get more coaches on there to talk about, their evaluators.
Why are you doing that kind of Kirby Smart imitation?
Well, that's kind of how he talks. He fascinates me. But anyway, there are coaches on the committee, Kirby. They do that. The players know, the former players, the guys who didn't coach. There's only a couple of people who didn't play or coach football on the committee. All right. I mean, so he needs to back off from that.
Well, Kirby's gonna make his case. The two here are the cases both for Texas and Georgia. Both of those teams are going to make it, but they might have the two best road wins in all of college football this year. Georgia beat Texas in Austin. Texas beat A&M in College Station. Those games matter, and Georgia is the only team in the top 12. Well, I looked before Saturday. The only team that had been in the top 12 last week, because Clemson was in the top 12, that had 3 wins over other top 12 teams. Georgia had a win over Tennessee, they had a win over Texas, and they had a win over Clemson. So they played a quality schedule. I think, look, coaches are gonna stand up for their teams and their schedules. I think even Joey McGuire was going off on the college football committee, the college football playoff committee this weekend, which that took some gumption.
Joey, win a few games first before you pop off.
Listen, it's always going to be, we've expanded. If we said, if there was ever a college football playoff, we'll solve all this. Well, we went to a 14 playoff. We said, if there was ever an 18 playoff, we'll solve all this. Well, now we're at a 12-team playoff, and we're still going to have questions about teams that get left out. That are deserved of being in consideration. So all I know is this, Kevin. We spent this season, the start of this season, talking about how NIL, the transfer portal, were going to, and conference realignment were the death knell of college football. And I would ask you, have we had a better college football season in your recent memory than we have had to this point?
Oh no, it's not even close. I have to say, I do believe in the in the champion / villain aspect of sports. It's like when people were saying about the World Series. Eric Nadel said that. Oh, I hate these teams that are in here. The Yankees and the Dodgers. And it's like you can't hate them, but you measure yourself against them. That when you beat them, you've really done something. It's like when the Rangers beat the Diamondbacks. Listen, I'm not knocking that at all. You got your flag and it flies forever. But you beat the Diamondbacks. Right. Wouldn't it have been more fun if they'd beaten the Dodgers? I mean, that would have really been something to have said you did that. So there's part of me that's like, I kind of wish that one of these teams was really dominant. I do wish that there was a team like Georgia was when then TCU ran into that buzzsaw. And then if you beat that team, you've really done something. I'm not diminishing this season at all from that standpoint, but I will say this: it has been so exciting. Every weekend there's been a game you say, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that they just lost to them, or that this happened, or that this coach did this, or this coach did that. I mean, crazy decisions being made, just stuff happening all the time. So it's
literally every Saturday this year, I have found myself typing on Twitter, because I'm hopeless, but I have found myself typing, God bless the SEC. It's been so much fun to watch week in and week out. The additions of Texas and Oklahoma. Look, I know it's been a bad season for Oklahoma, but they created upheaval with the win over Alabama.
I think that win to me was as big as any upset of the entire year.
Yeah.
There was no way in the world I thought Oklahoma could beat Alabama, and to not only beat them, but just dominate them.
Yeah,
like that. That was remarkable. I will say this too, because of all this, because Texas has gotten its quality win now, right? So no one should complain anymore. But I'll say this also: they also they manhandled Florida, and look what Florida did after that. They beat Kentucky, and Georgia beat Kentucky, beat them easily. Georgia beat them by 1 point. You can go down their schedule here and look at the people. They beat Arkansas, and Arkansas beat Tennessee, and they beat Arkansas on the road. So all of these wins that Texas has, you can look and see that, well, those teams that they beat, they may not have been really good at that time, but they beat somebody good. And so Texas, what are you going to do? You beat the teams in front of you, and if you do that, then people shouldn't have any complaints.
There should be no complaints, and I don't think there should have been complaints about Texas's schedule going into the A&M game. Yes, they didn't have a big road win over a ranked team, but when you play Michigan as a non-conference game, especially Michigan coming off a national championship, even without the same roster, that's a quality road win. That is a quality road win.
Well, it is, and when they beat Michigan, then, and of course they didn't have a quarterback, and that was clear in the first half. You just knew it's over. They don't have a quarterback. There's no way they can come back. But the thing is, they had 2 first-round draft picks on defense for Michigan, and that was before Michigan's defense got all beat up. They were still considered a really quality defense, and Texas scored, I think, 24 points in the first half. So, yes, they have done. I've had my questions about certain things at certain times with Texas because, let's face it, Quinn Ewers is a very enigmatic quarterback. He got a lot of Dak Prescott in him. He can play really well at times, and he can play other times where he doesn't look so good. Carson Beck is the same thing for Georgia.
I was just going to say, the thing about Kevin Jennings that I've loved is, and maybe SMU has played a weaker schedule here, but Kevin Jennings has not been nearly as schizophrenic as Carson Beck, or to the same point, Carson Beck, Quinn Ewers, Jackson Dart, even Jalen Milroe. All those guys have been up and down all across the season. Right now, Kevin Jennings for me and Lenora Sellers at South Carolina are playing as good a quarterback as there is in the country. In South Carolina, we haven't mentioned, they're number 13 in the rank in the polls right now.
Yeah.
I don't think they sneak in as another SEC team, but they're playing as good as any team in the country right now.
Well, the problem is going to be for the committee is getting all the 5 conference champions in, and they have to get all those in, and that's what's going to cause a problem for everybody else. I would expect that the SEC ends up paying for it instead of the Big Ten. The Big Ten is going to get 4, and then the SEC is going to get 3, and then everybody else, and then Notre Dame. So I do think that's probably how it's going to shake out. But I have no idea how it's going to go this weekend. If SMU should lose to Clemson, that's really going to create a mess for the committee because then you got to figure out. Now we have to get the conference champion in there, and that one they're ranked 18th now. I'm assuming Miami is out, and Miami has no shot.
Miami has no shot. You could get there's if SMU wins, you get 1 ACC team. If Clemson wins, I think that there's still an outside shot, depending on what all happens everywhere else, that you could get Clemson and SMU. But yeah, Miami's got no shot.
Yeah. Well, it'll be really interesting to see how they do that because
and they shouldn't have a shot. Miami shouldn't have a shot.
Well, no, they shouldn't have a shot. But the committee likes, going back to the thing about talent, it's like I think the committee would have wanted either Arizona State or Colorado because of the pro caliber athletes on there.
Sure.
Guys, Cam Scatabo for Arizona State, a really good running back, and of course Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter for Colorado. That didn't work out for the Colorado portion of that. But I do think, and that's the reason I think about it, Miami, is that Cam Ward's still in the running for the Heisman Trophy. But Miami's defense has just been terrible this year, and that's what ultimately cost them in the end. And so I'm a little surprised that, I think it shows the fact that, they're 14th in the AP rankings, and I think that's probably about what they'll be in the CFP rankings, when I'm not really sure that overall they're that good. It's just that's what Cam Ward has done to elevate them when you have those kind of players.
Agreed.
All right, that's going to do it for our college segment of the podcast. We're going to move over here and talk about the Cowboys and what's going on with them this week. And maybe hopefully they had a good Thanksgiving. They seem to. It was certainly
Rico Dowdle had a good Thanksgiving.
What's that?
Rico Dowdle had a good Thanksgiving.
Rico Dowdle did have a good Thanksgiving. He's kind of gaining on me a little bit. Not a fantastic back by any means. He certainly he's certainly a good guy to have on your roster. I'll say that. But we're gonna ask David more about that, and I think it's time for us to talk a little bit about maybe what the Cowboys would be looking to add. And I know we got a lot of time to talk about that over the coming months when it comes to the draft and where they are right now. But we'll get into all that.
At Texas Capital, we know that the path to greatness isn't for the faint of heart. It's full of chances and opportunities with no promises. We know because we help clients and communities achieve greatness every day. Texas Capital is a full-service financial services firm founded and headquartered in Dallas, Texas. Our customized solutions were built to keep your business moving forward. Please visit texascapital.com to learn more. That's texascapital.com. Texas Capital is the collective brand name for the Texas Capital Bank and its separate non-affiliate banks and wholly owned subsidiaries. For deposit products, member FDIC.
All right, David Moore joins us now, and David wrote a really nice piece last week about Dak Prescott and Tad Carper, the Cowboys director of communications. He's been here a couple years now. Came from the Cleveland Cavaliers organization. And I'll just set it up and just say that, Dak has a cancer screening program that he does in honor of his late mother. And he asked, for participation. And I think Mike McCarthy agreed to that. And so they made it available to the Cowboys staff. And I'll let you take it from there, David.
Yeah, it was just a very, very random set of circumstances, and talk about an unexpected gift. Dak Prescott, to honor his mother who died of colon cancer back in 2014, has a Faith Fight Finish Foundation, and he does a lot with cancer research. There's some other elements that the foundation does, but the focal point is cancer. He had a fundraiser in a downtown Dallas hotel every March. Mike McCarthy showed up at the fundraiser this past March, and they started talking. And McCarthy brought up that, one thing that our physicals for our assistant coaches don't check for is any sort of colon cancer. And I'd really like to expand what covers the coaches on the physicals. Is this something your foundation could do? And Dak talked about how touched he was by that because of what he had been through with his mother and the fact that Mike McCarthy was putting his staff at the forefront of his thoughts and doing something for them. And so he said, well, yeah, let me work on this. And certainly we can do something. We can do something in training camp. So through the foundation, he got back and the woman who runs the foundation for him said, yeah, we can do these colon, screen for colon cancer in, with the coaching staff if you want. And Dak said he sensed that she was a little, torn by it. And he said, well, is something wrong? You don't think we should do this? She said, no, it's just in my research, I came across this technology that allows you to test for more than 50 types of cancer at once, not just colon cancer. But I don't want to be too intrusive or invasive. They just asked for colon cancer. And so Dak told her, no, we'll pick up the additional cost. Let's do it. This isn't an issue. And so they paid for the screenings. They had a couple of open spots. It was just for the coaches. And Dak is very close with Tad Carper, communications director. And Tad, just like Tad was close with LeBron James when he was in Cleveland. And it was a comparable relationship, I would say. They spent a lot of time together. And Dak just invited him to take the test. And he said, well, I had my physical in March, don't have any symptoms, nothing was found. And he said, well, just come in, have the blood drawn, and, we have a couple extra spots. So Tad went in and did it and go from there. It turns out that this is a blood test, and it, rather than a single cancer screening, like I said, it tests for 50 or more. It's called a Gallery test. It's by Grail. And what happens is after they get into the lab, you get the results. And it tells you it appears you have some signals that you may have cancer in the X region of your body. You need to now have a single, screening to test for this area. And his came back and said, something's been detected in your neck and head. So you need to get with your physician and go from there. And they found he did have stage 2 throat cancer, no symptoms at all. He was also told that at that point, he probably would not have had symptoms until it was stage 3, and then it would have been a much different fight or journey ahead of him. But anyway, so he scheduled, had the surgery, had it removed, and now he's still scheduled for some radiation treatment in December. But all of this was born of a conversation that Mike McCarthy and Dak Prescott had involving the Cowboys coaching staff. And did potentially, as Tag Harper went up to Dak and told him, "You very likely saved my life."
Yeah, it's a pretty great story, and certainly in that kind of situation, you see what kind of person Dak Prescott is. And I don't think anybody you can question Dak's football skills and maybe how much money he makes to go with those football skills, but you cannot question what kind of person he is.
No, and talking to him on this, he got very emotional because, again, he's very faithful to his mother's memory. One of his final words of his mother to him was just tell my story. Let others, live through me and my story. And he's taken that to heart. I've seen him work in some of the cancer clinics around here, talking with the patients, dealing with them. But as he said, this is on the back end, right, with a lot of people he doesn't know, and often they're stage 3 or stage 4 when he's talking to them. To actually see his foundation make the difference in someone's life, well, not only someone's life, but someone he knows personally who would not have found this. I think both of them get pretty emotional talking about this.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. Well, kudos to them for that.
For sure.
And a nice story in a season that hasn't always been very nice for the Cowboys.
No, not a lot of good stories in the season.
Not a lot of good stories out there this year. Although they have played better recently, I think a lot of that has to do with the quality of the opponents, certainly the Giants, who are a mess. But we are seeing some things, too, that the Cowboys are doing. It appears, anyway, that they are kind of getting some things together on defense, especially with the return of Micah Parsons, and a rejuvenated Micah Parsons, I would say at that, who is playing better now than he was before he got hurt, in my estimation, it looks like. And it's kind of returned to the kind of player who could win a Defensive Player of the Year award. He's not going to get that now, but he is certainly playing at that level recently. And so I think as we're seeing these guys return to the lineup, we will probably see the Cowboys play a little better from here on. So Dave, kind of go over with us a little bit where they stand on their injury situation.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this is the best Micah Parsons has looked this year. I thought the first game or two back off that high ankle sprain where he missed 4 games, you noticed he wasn't the same explosive player. But now you're really seeing it, and you're seeing the impact he has on this defense. Also, they're starting to get some defensive players back. Deron Bland has played in these last couple of games, first time this season. Now they've been without Trayvon Diggs with the hamstring, but he could get back here. DeMarcus Lawrence is a guy that is going to start back in practice this week on a limited basis. If he's not ready to come back for Cincinnati, and we've seen him ramp up what he's doing cardio wise off to the side in recent weeks. If he's unable to go against Cincinnati, which I think is still a little bit of a stretch, I think he's potential to return these final 4 games. So you're seeing them get their playmakers back on defense, and I think as modest as this 2-game winning streak has been, when you see what they haven't done well this year and what they've done in this 2-game winning streak, I think this is the template that will allow them to win a few more games going forward in these final 5, which is it's not an explosive offense. There's really nothing at this stage for you to expect it will be one. So what's imperative? It's imperative that you have an improved ground game, control the time of possession, and don't turn the ball over. That's what you've seen these last 2 games in the winning streak. And now most of your playmakers are on the defensive side of the ball. So keep the score close, see what the defense and special teams can give you in terms of big plays, and go from there. And it's a very thin line for success with where this offense is. But you've seen them walk that line these last couple of games, and at least this is as good as they've looked since early in the season. And only then that was briefly early. So
I'm going to bring Evan in here to say how you feel about the fact that the Cowboys might be playing better now and winning games, Evan.
I don't care.
Evan, come on.
I don't. I mean, I look. These are two wins that I feel like were over poor caliber. I just don't know that any of this makes a difference, right? Is this team going to sneak into the playoffs?
No.
Oh, that was a legitimate question?
Yeah, no, I mean,
oh, no.
Okay, so
No.
if
So
it's not going to sneak into the playoffs,
your draft stock.
I guess for me, if it's not going to sneak into the playoffs, the most significant development over the last 2 weeks was the fact that Dowdle actually had a good game running the ball, even though it wasn't against a great opponent.
Well, I will say this:
long-term stuff here.
The Dowdle stuff, along with the offensive line. Let's talk about that, Dave, because I do want to talk about the development of the offensive line and where in the world this thing is going. How much of this situation with the offensive line has simply been a matter of course, the decline of Zach Martin, who I think you noted will return this week or is expected to return against Cincinnati. And how much of it is new guys, growth? We all know that the offensive line is the one segment of a team that needs more continuity than any other because they're all supposed to be working in concert. And maybe we have assumed too much when the Cowboys said, well, we're going to have a brand new center and a brand new left tackle, and to go with the fact that our right guard is in decline here and the right tackle is not playing well since he came back from that surgery. So I guess what I'm asking is, David, do you see this thing starting to settle a little bit, even with Zach Martin's problem? Because they did block better for Rico Dowdle last week. Do you see improvement there? Is there a feeling in the building that, okay, we're finally starting to get somewhere with this offensive line?
Well, last two games, I think they've done a pretty good job in run blocking compared to what we've seen this season. Now, that coincides with Zach Martin being out for those two games as well. But, yeah. I mean, he's better than the guys who are replacing him. That's not even in question. But I think, I'm struck by the way you asked that. You said, were we expecting too much of this offensive line with two of the five starters being rookies? I would turn that around and say, was the coaching staff and management expecting too much of the offensive line with two rookies starting in there? And I believe we touched on this before. Just because Tyler Smith a few years ago, who was taken in a comparable position late in the first round and really not on the first plateau level of talent at the position, but actually the second, very similar to Tyler Guyton in many ways. The words was, both of these guys should be starters in the league, like them, good, solid picks, but they're not necessarily ready to step in and start from day one. It could take some development. Well, it turns out Tyler Smith didn't take that much development. He was pretty much ready from day one. And I think there was a sense internally that, well, you know what? We hit this with Tyler Smith. We believe in what we're coaching. We believe in what we're doing here. We're going to do it with Tyler Guyton too. And he just hasn't played up to the level that Tyler Smith did his first season. And he's having trouble staying on the field. He's had the shoulder injury. He's been knocked around. He's had ankle. He hasn't been out there, and he has not played well at all. And to be a 12-5 team, you have to be pretty sure if you're going to go with two rookies in the offensive line and basically ignore the running back position, that you have the people in the building who can make that go and still play at an acceptable level for you. Whereas, you may be taking a half step back, but you're not taking a full step back. Well, it turns out they were taking a couple of steps back with how they approached it this year. And they're just now kind of catching up and I think managing the situation.
Yeah, this is it. To me, this is important because as I see it, the problems on defense are mostly because of a loss of personnel. you lost the top 4 defensive ends.
And the scheme changed. They had issues with. I think being in Dan Quinn's system for 3 straight years, a lot of what they did was second nature. This wasn't second nature to them, and so that took a little adjustment. But then suddenly you take Micah Parsons out of the mix. You take DeMarcus Lawrence out of the mix. You take Deron Bland never arrived in the mix. I mean, they were really behind it from the start defensively.
They were, and so that's my point is getting to. So obviously there are needs going into this next draft, and that was the whole point about screwing up your draft slot. If you start winning too much and you get back into the teens, that's an issue because this is a draft that's considered not a good one. I've seen where some scouts have said there's probably 8 to 10 real first round draft picks, which is about 6 or 8 less than what it usually is, and so if you're drafting, if you got a top 10 pick, well, then you're going to get a good player. If you're drafting after that, you're really kind of getting a glorified second rounder. And so it does have an impact on the Cowboys, how many games they win. Now, I'm not saying they should be trying to lose these games, but I don't think that fans should be wishing for them. And when I'm looking at that also, the question in my mind is, do you really want to, we have said that the running back position no longer, is a key position anymore.
I would say that's been refuted this year, but yes.
So that's the point. This year, and it's a lot of interesting dynamics here because maybe the deepest position in the draft is at running back.
It's running back. Yeah.
I've read that there are as many as 30 running backs that could play in the league eventually. And they won't be starters right away, but they're guys who could make rosters. And there's probably 6 to 8 who could start right away and be very productive for teams. So my question is that I have kind of come around a little bit here and thought that, if Ashton Jeanty was available when the Cowboys drafted, he's a very dynamic running back. He is not just a guy. I believe he's a LaDainian Tomlinson type of running back, a guy who can come into the league and make a real impact. I have a hard time believing that Jerry would pass that up if it was available to him. But of course, you also want to look at it from the standpoint of, shouldn't they be split? If there's so many running backs, shouldn't they wait and take one in the second or third round? Shouldn't they take another offensive lineman in the first to plug this gap? And my question is that they've already got 2 young offensive linemen that they drafted last year working into the mix. Do you really want to add another rookie to that mix when you would hopefully see a step up in the second year from those offensive linemen that it would in which you would not have to spend another first round pick on one?
Yeah, their plan was to transition into the future with the offensive line, which is why they didn't really make a concerted effort to keep Tyron Smith here another year. It was like, well, yes, this is going to hurt us early, but we believe, we'll gain the benefits of plugging this guy in from day one. And like I said, I don't know that you've seen it to the level that any of them expected internally. But yeah, now you're exactly right. Now you're looking at, 2 young offensive linemen. I don't think they have any problem with Beebe at all. I think they feel very, very good about Cooper Beebe. But now what? So you're going to add another young lineman into the mix, and you have to take a hard look at, is Terrence Steele the guy we thought he was at right tackle? And they're going to have to analyze that this offseason. So suddenly, I think they felt they were responsibly addressing the offensive line with, we took Tyler Smith, took a year off, took another first-round pick on an offensive lineman and a third-round pick. So, that's pretty good. And McCarthy's always had the philosophy you don't need all high draft picks in that offensive line, but you need 2 to 3, and then you fill out the line the rest of the way. But you got to hit on who you fill it out with,
I'm really intrigued by the whole offensive line because I could really see, because Terrence Steele is a terrific run blocker. He's a Pro Football Focus still has him like at 80% as a run blocker, which is
because of all those
really
running
high.
Plays they had at Texas Tech when he was a lineman there. Which just blows me away.
Exactly.
He's his best at run blocking, and he came from a passing school.
I know. It is very crazy. But I'm wondering if he wouldn't be better served being moved inside to play guard. If this is, Zach Martin's last season, that maybe you move him to right guard. Maybe you flip Tyler Guyton the right tackle, maybe because that's what he played at Oklahoma. Maybe he'd be better off playing the right side. Maybe you kick Tyler Smith out to the left tackle. I know that they like him better at guard, but you got to do what's best for the team. And then that assortment of other guards that the Cowboys have.
I think it's all on the table. Yeah. And a lot of that's going to depend on the coaching staff too, right? But I think all of that's on the table going forward. I really do.
I just think that those are things that they would contemplate, yes, in a new coaching staff and whatever they do. And then it allows you some more freedom. Because I will say this, so I'm saying I wouldn't be averse to them taking Genty if he's available. But if you got a top 10 pick, you take the best player. Whoever that guy is, then you take that. If that's Abdul Carter.
They took Elliott at 4.
Yes.
I mean, Barkley showed how dominant he is this year. Barkley was a high draft. You haven't had a lot of high first-round running back picks. And in some years, you haven't even had a first-round running back at all in recent years. But I think that's going to change this year.
I think it will, too, because we've seen what happened in the NFL this year, right, with the running game and how running backs have become so much more important because defenses are so much better now and they just get more intricate all the time. And you just got to have a ground game. And that's, and you've talked about this before, how good Dak is with a play action. And that without a running game this year, I think that accounts for a lot of his problems on offense. And
the bottom line on all this, and there were the Cowboys received criticism when they took Elliott at 4 because it's like, no, you don't take backs that high. That's where you take, that's where you take a blue chip corner or a left tackle. 4 is too high for running backs. You can get a good running back later and all this stuff. But my counter to that was the Cowboys didn't misstep taking Ezekiel Elliott at 4. The misstep was signing him to a second contract.
Yes.
When it went against everything they said that they know running backs on second contracts usually deteriorated and you don't want to pay for that because of just the pounding they take. I mean, they let DeMarco Murray walk after rushing for 1,500 yards or whatever it was, and were willing to do it because they went, well, no, you just replace that position and keep going. You don't pay it beyond the rookie contract. Well, now, they made too big of a deal of it because Elliott jumped the gun and a year before he was even up said, well, look, no, I want to do this now because I know how you're going to handle me. And but it turned out if they would have been able to do that, that would have been a good move. And I have always said, I've never been one. I understand the whole argument on left tackle or a blue chip position, a cornerback. Those are the drop off from the top ones down to the next level is pretty dramatic a lot of times. And I get all that and I understand it. I understand there are more skilled players at running back and receiver out there. But I will also say there are very few rookie positions that can give you the production that a rookie running back will, because that is still a position where just natural ability and an instinctive feel for the position can translate quicker than a lot of other positions in the NFL.
So there's no question about that.
And you saw that with Elliott, what he did that first year,
Well, you look at, and I had my questions about drafting Zeke at 4 too, but you got 4 great years out of him, right?
Yeah.
If the Cowboys came to that, right now, Dak's window is about 4 years, right? Mm-hmm. Don't we think, as a quarterback? And so what you want right now, when Dak's ready to go, if you haven't drafted a quarterback by that time that could be his replacement, which shame on them if they haven't done that, you're going to be breaking everything down in 4 years anyway. And so you might as well give him the best possible weapons that he can have at his disposal to get the most out of this window that he has left.
Agreed.
Evan, what do you think about that?
I'm looking at some quotes from Jaden Blue right now.
Good for you. I'm
researching the SEC championship game. I'm doing a lot of research.
That's good that you're doing that while we're
I'm This is why, Kevin, you get the big money. I don't know that I could talk about Dak Prescott's window any longer.
Well, he's got a window. It's not a very big one. It's a little window. It's like one of those things like if you're on a cruise ship, and you got one of those little windows you're looking out and trying to see the ocean.
I'm not sure my window's ever been open, so I discuss all this in theory.
David's in the basement. He doesn't have a window.
Let me just ask you this. Let's just summarize this. in this question. Has this in any way been an interesting Cowboys season for either of you guys? No, I'm dead
that is a
serious.
serious question. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, it's been interesting. You
one.
can't doubt that. It's been interesting. I mean, look at all the stuff that's happened. It's just been crazy. It's another crazy Cowboys season. It's what makes the Cowboys fun to have around. That's why it's fun to have Jerry around. There's always something going on. But if you're talking about, is it interesting from the standpoint of, wow, look at this and look what they're doing here. This is interesting. No, it hasn't been that at all.
I compare it to what is, was it Planet Nine is regarded as one of the worst movies ever.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
Well, once you've gotten this deep into the reel and you understand it's going to be a season that you didn't expect, you might as well, and you've had literally the sky has fallen. The sun has shone through and you can't see. I mean, every game seems to be a referendum on a complaint that the fan base has had about this franchise forever. And once you get that deep into the reel, you kind of want to go, well, do you really want to invest this much time and not see the worst season ever?
Yeah. True that. Well, that's the whole point about this now, David. So we're going to close this up here, but before we get out of here, the Cowboys, what's the record now, David?
I don't know.
5-7.
5-7.
I was thinking 5-7. Yeah. So 5-7, they got 5 games left.
Let me tell you this, Kevin. If I told you going into the season that going into December that Dallas would have the same record in the NFC as the San Francisco 49ers and be one game better in the one-loss column than their upcoming opponent, Cincinnati, you would have taken that, wouldn't you? Yes, you would have.
For sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. The 49ers are a great story, too. I mean, look what's happened to them. I mean, I wouldn't think that, to me, the 49ers were the Georgia of the NFL. This was a team you can count on. This team's going to play good defense, going to play good offense, and they may lose a game here or there, but this is one of the few teams that you can really count on to play really well. And look what's happened to them.
Evan, your rebuttal. Your Georgia rebuttal to that comment.
It just is interesting that the narrative on Georgia has changed, but with Saban gone and Georgia having won 2 championships in the last 3 years, it is what it is. But I will just say this to answer your question, to move back to your question. I will give the Cowboys 7 wins when this is all said and done.
7 wins. David, what about you?
Yeah, I think 7 or 8. I think that they're going to get back to that because, again, I didn't think that their nucleus was as bad as what their record was early in the season, and they haven't been broken. And so now I think you see them starting to reclaim a little bit of who most people thought they were. So not enough to make it, here's the other thing. I was joking around about them in San Francisco. Well, the other side of this is Dallas goes into December 5 games behind division-leading Philadelphia with 5 games left. So the Eagles only have to win 1 more game to close Dallas out of winning the division. So now what is the path to the postseason? It is, 3 teams are going to come out of the North. 3 teams have already won 9 games in the North. So that's a lot. Basically, Dallas is playing for 1 playoff spot. They would have to pass or tie if they have the tiebreaker with Washington, who they've already beaten this year. They're 2 games behind them right now. So if they could get to second in the division, have the tiebreaker with Washington, they would have a chance for the final playoff spot in the NFC. But remember, those other divisions are tied at like teams at 6-6, and they're like 2 or 3 of them in each division at 6-6, which is still 1 game ahead of the Cowboys in the standings.
Yeah. I got 7 wins is top end. I got them 1 win with Carolina for sure. I don't know. They could win another game in there, but I wouldn't be surprised if they.
Well, they don't have any more games with the Giants, so that's going to be difficult.
Yeah, that hurts them.
Well, they got the Eagles, they got the Commanders, they've got the Buccaneers, and then of course the Bengals
and Carolina that's playing pretty well right now.
They
Carolina
are.
on the road. Yeah.
When I say that for sure, as soon as I said that, I thought this is really going to come back to bite me.
No, I mean Carolina on the road. I don't have that as an automatic, and really for me, the Bengals on Monday is a complete toss up because the Bengals have been they've been the most maddening team in the NFL this year in my mind.
They're all over the place. Yeah, I don't know how you could really count on anything. I mean, things are going to happen, but I do think that this is probably a 6 or 7 win team, which probably gets them the 13th, 14th, 15th pick somewhere in
right in there. Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that they won't have that's still okay. But I do think that there are going to be some possibilities at that point, and we'll see what the Cowboys do, because it's not just the first round, of course, it's the second and third and fourth and fifth,
and they're going to have four compensatory picks too from the good players they've lost who've gotten a lot of time elsewhere, so that will help give them capital if they want to move up even farther into some of these rounds, and I think they will.
I will just to Kevin's point, I will say, and I know I just said I think they end up with 7 wins, but I do think that is the high end. You could make a case that they've won all the games that they're going to win too. I do think 7 is the high end for them.
I think it'll have a lot to do with how these guys who are coming back perform when they come back. You can't expect them to come in and just perform at top level like a DeMarcus Lawrence after being out all season. That's going to be very difficult, but it will make a difference. They are a different team when they've got Micah Parsons playing at top level.
And while they've won 2 one-score games, right? They got 2 special teams touchdowns to win the game against Washington by 1 score, and they got 1 defensive touchdown to win the New York game by 1 score. So what's going to happen against the Cincinnati? I saw this yesterday going that game. I know we need to wrap it up here real quick, but I think Cincinnati, they're underperforming from what you anticipated they would be as well. But this note blew me away. I think they had scored 25 or more points in like 3 consecutive games. And Joe Burrow in that stretch had 3 touchdowns and 0 interceptions on 3 straight games of scoring 25 or more points, and they were 0-3, something that's never happened in NFL history before.
Is that right? That is phenomenal. You would think that's an automatic. If you gave those stats, unless you had the world's worst defense, you would think that was an automatic.
Yeah, and their defense isn't good, and their offensive line is questionable, which feeds into Dallas with Micah Parsons back, and they've really generated a pretty good pass rush these past couple of games. But the other side of that is that I'm not sure that Dallas's offense matches up with anyone favorably in the NFL at the moment.
All right, one last question, a quick answer. Is Trey Lance going to end up playing any more than he is right now? Which is not at all.
Which is like one or 2 snaps a game. Yes, I believe once Dallas is eliminated, you will see Trey Lance.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean anything. They're not going to re-sign him, but it's just fun to watch somebody else play.
Well, maybe you see a little something, and he goes, you want to sign a 2-year deal to stay here and keep it going here. Which could be a win if you see something out of him.
Well, certainly they need to do something to make up for the fact that they gave up a 4th-round draft pick for a guy who never got on the field. So that would be good. All right, that's going to do it for this week. We appreciate you turning out and listening. We hope that you'll come back next week and listen for some more stuff. We're getting close to the end of this calendar year.
Yes, we're all getting close to the end.
We're all very close to the end.
Not metaphorically. David. You were just...
we are. You're right about that. So from everybody in here to everybody out there, thanks, and we'll see you next time.